Well, this is really an interesting video that we're fixing to do right now. This one's on salt, and we're kind of known as the salt generation. And so I want to go through and I want to tell you there's so much involved with salt, and this is really interesting because you know, I teach several classes, and this crosses over. This is about so many things. Salt affects us in so many ways. The chemistry of salt, what it does to the human body and human anatomy, and then the psychology of salt even affecting us in our brain. So salt is an amazing thing, and we're getting known as the salt abuse generation. So let's talk about this, okay? So salt, of course, table salt is sodium chloride. And do we need salt? That's the first question. And the answer is yes. We need some salt. We need electrolytes in our body. As a matter of fact, what do electrolytes do? Well, electrolytes generate 0.5 millivolts in our body. We have a sodium potassium pump in there, and we actually make an electrical current in our body with the salts, with the electrolytes. It's really fascinating. The positives and the negative ions actually make an electrical current in our body. We have to have the electrolytes. So we need electrolytes. So what if we don't have electrolytes? Well, if we don't have electrolytes in our body, okay, the first sign that we get is a headache. We also begin to get cramps. Now, what is a cramp? Okay, the brain is sending messages to the neurons and the nerves in the body, okay? So the brain sends a message, okay? And so this says to this brain sends this message to a muscle. But we have the neurons here, and it's actually an electrolyte, okay? It's an electrolyte that actually makes the connection, all right? So it connects this electrical circuit, and then all of a sudden, now we have an electrical circuit here that says to the muscle to do what? Well, when the brain tells the muscle to do one of two things. The brain, whenever we have an electrical current, the muscles contract, okay? So all of the muscles in the body are dependent upon the electrolytes as it goes to tell that muscle to contract, all right? Now, when we stop sending the signal, from the brain, okay, all right, and we lose the electrolyte, okay, then the muscle relaxes. But we have a really weird thing that goes on in our body, okay? We have a really weird thing that's going on in our body, all right? When we don't have an electrolyte in our body, when we don't have enough electrolytes, all right, and we send the signal for electrolyte, our body begins to conserve the electrolytes. It's like we don't have enough electrolytes in the body, all right? So what happens is the electrolyte stays in there and it doesn't wash out this electrolyte. And so we literally contract this muscle to the point to where then the brain says, relax muscle, but when we don't have the electrolytes in our body, we actually don't release that electrolyte. We hold on to it, okay? It's really an interesting phenomenon, okay? It's kind of like somebody doesn't eat, okay, and so their body actually holds on to the food, won't let the food go through. It says we have a shortage. When we have a shortage of electrolytes and we have the synapses, it really doesn't release that electrolyte. So you're laying in bed at night and you get this cramp and you're like, oh boy, I've got this cramp in my calf or my thigh or wherever. And so what happens is we go in, we get more electrolytes. We eat more bananas, we drink Gatorades, we have salt, pickle juice is great electrolytes. Sometimes we work so hard that we don't have enough water in our system, and that causes an electrolyte imbalance. We have the salts, but we don't have enough water in there to mix. So we know that we have to have electrolytes. There's no doubt about it. But what if we're getting too much salt? What if we're getting too much salt? Well, let's take a look here. We've got some fascinating things here This test tube right here, the second one, tells us about how much salt we need. So we need one half of a teaspoon of salt per day in our body. Okay? So that's really neat. That's how much salt we need. But what's that big old tube on the first one? That big old tube on the first one says, oh, this is dangerous. That's too much salt for one day. So what's wrong with too much salt? If we need a good electrolyte, what's wrong with too much salt? Well, the problem with too much salt is that our kidneys then, once we get too much salt in our system, the kidneys hold on to the water. and they do not let the water go through the urinary system. And so instead of urinating out the water that we don't need or the excess water, the kidneys hold on to the water. It's kind of like we said a while ago. We get too much salt, so the kidneys say, oh, we need all the water we can get. Well, what happens is that water builds up, and we increase the volume of water in our blood. It's called the tidal volume. And so all of a sudden, we've got this amount of blood in our body. Well, when we start saving the water, then the amount of volume in our blood gets larger. Now, did we add hemoglobin? No. Did we add oxygen? No. We just added salt and added water. So the heart has to beat a lot faster to get that blood to go through. That's called hypertension. So what happens is, as this heart has to beat faster, okay, once or twice that's not a problem, but over a period of time, hypertension is really hard and can cause heart disease, which is a failure for our heart to work. So what we have is, we have a really interesting problem, because this salt doesn't always just come from a salt shaker. As a matter of fact, we can shake, depending on your salt shaker and how big the holes are we shake out, we can shake a salt shaker 8 to 10 times, okay? And we can get that half a tablespoon of salt, which is the amount of salt we need for a day. But the problem is, whenever we eat something, it's possible, okay, that the salt didn't come from the salt shaker, that the salt was already in things. We are putting salt in things to preserve them, to keep them from rotting. As we put them in systems, we're putting salt in for taste. We're putting a lot of salt in things. This is the amount of salt. This is the amount of salt in a fast food hamburger. Okay, that's the amount of salt in one hamburger. Well, as we can tell, we already have more salt than we need for the day in one hamburger. So let's take that hamburger now and shake the salt shaker on it. Now what are we doing? We're getting closer to this, which is too much salt. Okay, well, that's a 1 patty hamburger. What are we going to do with that 4 patty hamburger? That's going to be 4 times this. Okay, as you can see, we're becoming the salt generation. So that's a hamburger. Once again, that's how much we need. That's too much salt. That's a dangerous amount. If we do that every day, we are going to have health problems. So then it's kind of an interesting comparison. This is 1 cup of chicken noodle soup that's produced by Campbell's or by some company. Well, they want to put the salt in there not only for taste, but also to make sure that it's in that can, that it doesn't have to be refrigerated. Because salt is a preservative. Salt keeps it from spoiling. Oh, well, look at all that salt. That's a ton of salt. That's about 3 times what we need in one day, just in a regular can of chicken noodle soup. Now, this is a chicken noodle soup that's homemade. We just take the chicken and the noodles and put it in a regular beef broth, okay? And that's how much salt there is. So we can see we're adding tons of salt to keep things from deteriorating in our cabinets, all right? So then we move on. Now look at this. This has a lot. This is amazing. This is 1 hot dog, okay? It's also the same thing for about 20 potato chips. And it's also the same thing for 1 tablespoon of ketchup. Wow. So look at what we've got here, okay? I don't know if you've gone to an all-you-can-eat hot dog contest, but that wouldn't be good, would it? So a hot dog or 20 chips. I don't know about you. Sometimes I get into a bag of potato chips and that bag's so good I eat the whole bag. Okay? When they say serving size, it tells you how much sodium, how much salt. So that's really a problem. And then this is an interesting deal because this is lunch meat. This is a 3 ounce, which is about the equivalent to 3 pieces of lunch meat that's ham lunch meat. And we add a ton. Now, lunch meat is one of those things that you can set out on a kitchen cabinet, okay, and it'll get a little slimy over a period of time, but it won't break down, okay? It's kind of like that story of the one school that did an experiment with a Twinkie that's now famous. At 20 years, they have this Twinkie in case it still hasn't broken down. We're putting preservatives in these, and salt is the most common preservative that we're putting in. So, once again, we got to be careful. We are becoming the salt generation. So where does this pertain to you? You're like, well, I feel healthy. I feel great. Okay. But the problem is years' use of over-prolonged salt is causing heart disease, which means your heart is having trouble working over a period of time. Remember, if you're going to take in this amount of salt every day, what's going to happen? Your body is going to do what? Hold the water. Your body is going to hold the water and increase the volume of blood that you have. Not increase the oxygen, but increase the volume because of the overall amount of water in your blood. And it's going to make your heart beat faster, okay, as your heart beats faster, to try to get the same amount of hemoglobin. So, you know, once again, we've got to be really careful with the salt shaker because so many things we have already has salt in them. So, as we look at this, pretty good. It's a health thing. You watch in your generation, it's going to be a big thing. We're going to come into where pretty soon we're going to have a lot of regulations saying, wow, we got to cut back on salt. We're telling everybody that now. We're educating people. But now in these college classes, we begin to look and we say, why is this? We begin to understand that the salt generation is not what we want to be known for. You might think about your salt consumption, and you might think about also how much salt we need and how much salt we're actually getting and how much salt we're adding with that salt shaker. So as you eat your next meal, watch out for the salt.